you very much. I'm going to ask Aileen to take us through the Sedarin and to make any apologies, please.
Morning, members. Can I get you to confirm your attendance when I call your name, please? Councillor Barton.
Here, thanks, Aileen.
Councillor McGee.
Here.
Councillor Friel.
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Sangster.
Here, good morning.
Councillor Mayben.
Good morning, President.
Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Lennox.
Morning, here.
I've got apologies from Councillors Crawford, Watts and Filson. Councillor Hogg.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen. Members are going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that is any declarations of interest. There's no one in the room intimating, and I don't see anyone online. Thank you very much. So we've got item 2 on the agenda, and that is a hearing procedure. Members, we don't have a hearing this morning, so I don't think we'll need to go through that procedure and move straight on to item 3 in the agenda. And that is planning application number 25/0303/PP. It's an application for mixed use development, including EV charging facility, Class 3 food and drink, and Class 1A convenience retail, with associated car parking and landscaping at land at Glasgow Road, Kilmarnock, KA3 6BQ by Perquad Kilmarnock Limited. I'm going to hand over to Fiona Finlay, who's going to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Today, members, you are considering this application for planning permission for a retail unit, coffee shop with drive-through and EV charging point mixed-use development on land at Glasgow Road at the north of Kilmarnock. The proposed site is located within Rowallan Business Park within the Kilmarnock settlement boundary at the northern edge.
Sorry, Fiona, sorry for interrupting. The members are just kind of intimating that they're not getting the presentation under displays.
The slight delay.
Oh, good now.
Slight delay.
Thanks, Fiona.
The time delay. Okay, I've lost where I am now. Apologies. I'll just start at the start of the paragraph again. The proposed site is located on Rowallan Business Park within the Kilmarnock settlement boundary towards the northern edge of Kilmarnock, accessed off South Craigs Avenue. Post access will be taken off the section of South Craigs Avenue that leads to Rowallan Business Park. With Glasgow Road being a strategic transport route, the site is also a prominent gateway location leading to and from Kilmarnock and the M77 and A77 corridor. The site is currently a development plot within the overall development site within the East Ayrshire local plan, which is safeguarded for business and industrial development. There are full details of the site location and proposals outlined in your report, starting at paragraph 3 on page 5. But in summary, the proposed development is for a mixed use comprising Class 1A convenience store, Class 3 food and drink unit with drive-through, EV charging facility, associated car parking and landscaping. The applicant proposes to operate the retail unit from 7 AM to 11, Monday to Saturday, and 7:30 to 10:30 on a Sunday. Following discussions with the applicant's agent, it's proposed to operate the coffee shop with drive-through from 6 AM to 11 PM daily, and deliveries after discussions are now proposed from 7 AM to 11 PM on a daily basis for both uses, with EV charging units be available 24 hours a day. I'll just turn to the screens now that everybody's got them on the screen, and we can run through some site details and some photographs for you. Okay, so has everybody still got it okay on the screens yet? Yeah, okay. So you'll see the sort of the line just where the wording is says Rowallan Business Park. That's the application site that's been annotated on there. You'll see the roundabout just south of that, which leads into the Rowallan estate onto South Craigs Avenue and further over onto the North Craigs residential development, which is still undergoing residential development and construction works there. You'll also see, as you go north from the Glasgow Road, the residential development on the right to the right hand side, which is to the east of the application site at Craig Hall, and to the south you'll see the residential area of South Craigs. Okay, the next screen is the sort of location plan that's been submitted by the applicant, which just shows the plan that I've shown you a minute ago in a little bit more information and detail, and you can just see the layout of the site, well, the location of the site alongside surrounding land uses and the road network. This is the proposed layout of the site. So to the north of the site, hopefully you can see my cursor. is the retail unit, and to the south is the coffee shop with drive-through. You can see the access to the very left of this, to my left of the screen, and that's the existing access point. And obviously members had the opportunity to attend a site visit earlier this week, and you will have been aware that, and you'll see from the photographs in a minute, that the site access is actually already formed in there. The EV charging is located within the site to the left-hand side over here to the north, and you'll see the parking arrangements and the access through. You'll see the pedestrian connections onto Glasgow Road, and you'll see an indication of landscaping that is proposed, but I've got a landscape plan on the next page for you. You'll see the servicing arrangement with the orange truck for the Sainsbury's unit, and obviously you'll see the sort of drive-through element of the unit to the south. The area to the south is the area of landscaping that's referred to in the report, which is out with the application site, but is part of the setting of the industrial estate. So we put this plan up just to show you the sort of extent of the greenery, etc. The level of landscaping is outlined in your report as well, members, in terms of the landscaping and the tree planting and the hedging, etc. that's proposed as part of the overall scheme. So moving on to the design of the units, you'll have seen from the report that we have worked with the applicant's agent from what was initially submitted to obtain a development where the two units actually kind of read as a cohesive development. So you'll see the Sainsbury's local unit here that is proposed. You'll see the sort of render and the timber clad and the metal sort of roofing details of that. And moving on to the drive-through, you'll see how we've tried to follow materials through and carry forward the materials for the drive-through and coffee shop unit as well. This is just the location plan from the coordinate map, from the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2, which just demonstrates that the site is within, as I've said to you, the safeguarded industrials area there. Just to the south, members, where it says Prop 3, that is the suburb centre for the Western Road Shopping Centre with Tesco and the other units that I referred to, and the petrol filling station in the unit there. The sort of purple light outline identifies that as suburb centre, and the Prop 3 is the proposal that that could be a park and ride if it was ever brought forward, and you'll see that there. Photographs for you, members. This is the roundabout at Glasgow Road. The application site is behind the housing signage, which is identified there. But that is the Glasgow Road. And to the left-hand side, you'll see the access that leads you into the application site. And to the right-hand side of the photograph, you'll see the continuation of Glasgow Road towards the M77 and to Fenwick. This is just looking over the application site back towards the access, which is over just at the break in the hedging over here. This is the landscaped area just at the roundabout, which is the site that's south of the site, which is the land that's south of the site. You'll see that's part of the overall local environment. This is the access point in the site, so that's looking over towards Glasgow Road and the Craighall residential development behind it. We've put this slide in, members. This is the roundabout, just to show you the splitter islands. There were some queries, I think, at the site visit, so we agreed just to put these photographs in, and Barry's here today in case there's any questions as well. And that's the splitter island there on Glasgow Road, just at the big roundabout where the signage was at the start. And I think that's me for photographs, but obviously if any members want anything added, I can obviously come back up with the presentation at any point. That's not a problem if they get any queries. Turning back to the report, we have no objections from consultees, starting within your paragraph 19. And in terms of representations, we have received one objection and 3 parties have written in support, and the points raised are noted in the report in both respects. The development plan for East Ayrshire comprises the adopted East Ayrshire Local Plan of 2024, known as LDP2, and NPF4 with associated supplementary guidance. The report before you at paragraph 35 refers to the planning considerations for the application. Today, members, I'm going to concentrate on the primary considerations within that list and summarise these for you, which are the principal, layout, design, quality and place, transport, parking and access, and residential amenity. There are other matters which are identified in your report, which are more technical issues and have been discussed within the report, such as climate change, wildlife, biodiversity and flood risk. In terms of the primary issues and firstly principle, the proposed development, whilst located within the allocated business and industrial site, is not considered to detrimentally affect the overall business and industrial land provisions within Kilmarnock. There is more than 40 hectares of land allocated specifically for this purpose, remaining undeveloped in the wider area. The relatively small size of the site and its location in relation to the wider development site is not considered to prejudice the supply of developable land for these purposes. The development is also not considered to affect the primary business and industrial function of the area, given the location and neighbouring uses. Whilst the applicant has provided a town centre first assessment to justify Class 3 food and drink, this doesn't, however, fully address all possible preferable options, specifically at the commercial centre at Queen's Drive. Notwithstanding this, however, given the location and scale of the development and proposed target market, including motorists from the A77 and M77, in addition to the surrounding business and residents, proposal is considered to be acceptable as a minor departure from policy TC2. The retail convenience unit is suitably justifiable under policy TC3 as a neighbourhood retail unit and will provide additional easily accessible services for North Craigs, South Craigs and Westland Walk, which I'm referring to as the Craighall Road development, residential areas in particular. The incorporation of the drive-through facility within the coffee shop unit can be justified, noting Scotland's Chief Planner's letter updating the position of Policy 27D and MPF4, where the drive-through element is part of a larger development with significant benefits in this location. Overall, the principle of the mixed-use development can be supported in this location, and the principle of the development is acceptable as a minor departure. And the application is considered to be compliant with all other relevant policies as detailed in your report. In terms of layout, design, quality and place with placemaking principles, overall the proposal is considered to present a distinctive, safe, pleasant, connected, healthy, adaptable and sustainable development that will ultimately improve the visual amenity of the development site and the surrounding area and improve accessibility for services to residential properties. We've worked with the applicant, as I've said to you through the slideshow, to improve the design of the overall development, ensuring a more cohesive development within a landscape setting. And we've introduced a public art condition through placemaking principles to add to the identity and maximise the gateway aspect of the site. In terms of transport, the proposed development will use the existing formed access into the site, with a new access road running through the site and 4 separate areas of car parking provided along with service bay. There are no objections from ARA, who are also in attendance today. In terms of residential amenity, there are existing residential areas, as I've highlighted to you, but there is separation provided by Glasgow Road and South Craigs Avenue. The nearest residential properties are approximately 45 metres from the development site. Excuse me. During construction, it's accepted that there will be an increase in noise and activity, but in the event of an approval, we propose conditions to address construction hours. During the operational period, as noted at paragraph 92, we've considered this in conjunction with Environmental Health Service, and we are seeking to limit delivery times and operational times to ensure that we suitably protect residential amenity. It's not considered that the proposed development will adversely affect the character of the area or residential properties. In conclusion, the retail convenience unit and charging points are both considered to be compliant with relevant policies in the development plan. Proposed food and drink unit with the drive-through is essentially contrary to the policy TC2 and IND3, albeit we believe it is a minor departure, but overall the development will benefit the locale in providing additional services within an acceptable location. It is of a high quality in terms of design, layout, material finish and landscape specification, and it is overall acceptable in this instance as a minor departure from the development plan. Members are therefore respectfully requested to approve the application, subject to the conditions starting on page 27 of your report. And back to yourself, Chair.
Thanks very much, Fiona. So members, at this point, I'm going to hand over to yourselves for any questions or points of clarification needed. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to members and officers that came on the site visit early in the week. I think that was really helpful to have a look in the wider context of where this facility will be. A couple of comments from me first, and then my questions around the kind of connectivity and the pedestrian walkways. I think the cohesive design across the 2 units, because there are obviously 2 different operators here, I think that's to be welcomed. And the placemaking principle of the public art, I think as well, will help raise the quality of that area, especially as it's such an important gateway into the town, one of the main arterial roads in. My questions though really are on the pedestrian connections, because I know they have been lacking in the past up there, and we have spent a bit of council funds to get them upgraded over the years. But I know, and thank you for putting that Splitter Island image in. I know that one in particular. I've had conversations with roads in the past. It's quite narrow, so I'm interested to know how we're going to improve specifically that area, because I think in the plan that Splitter Island leads into one of the walkways at the top of the pedestrian would access it. So I think that Splinter Island itself is really important, but just some general comments from roads around that connectivity, that would be very helpful. And maybe for the planners, these type of developments sometimes can attract a lot of litter and rubbish. And I know that maybe isn't a planning consideration, but I'd like to know how the operator's going to cope with that on the site, because especially when it's drive-through, sometimes people, I know it's poor behaviour, but they'll roll down the window and they'll throw the rubbish out the window. So how the operator's going to encourage that we get, proper use of litter bins and things like that. Sorry, that's quite a lot. My question is really on the pedestrian connection and that particularly narrow Splinter Island, because that road, the Glasgow road there, is considerably high volume traffic and it's quite fast traffic there. Thank you.
Bring in Fiona and then bring in our other colleagues then.
Thank you. I've put the site plan back up. Has everybody got it on their screens before I start to point bits? Okay. If you look over to the Glasgow Road to the east, you'll see there's a footpath connection there, Councillor Cowan. We've obviously got the access point at South Craigs Avenue. If you look just south of the access point, there's also a little footpath connection down there for people to use as well. Obviously, the other related question links into how those links into the Splitter Islands, which I'll maybe bring Barry in on. You also mentioned litter and rubbish. That is an operational matter for the operators. Sorry, I can't get my words out. But what we could do is we could add in a condition relative to bins, etc., and ask what their process would be for the control of litter from an amenity perspective. We don't have a planning condition in that regard on an operational basis, but I'm quite happy to add that in. Pamela, I think you were nodding there, as that would be acceptable to yourself as Chief Planner too?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate, and we've used that
Yep,
elsewhere.
we have. So I could do that for you as well, if that would be something that members would think would be appropriate. And I'll maybe pass on to Barry. If you want me to come back in, just let me know.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Cowan, you'll appreciate the fact that we've previously reviewed the site to assess what opportunities are there in relation to improving the pedestrian crossing on that section of road. I think we agreed that there's pretty limited options in terms of controlled crossing points, so that kind of led us to look at the Splitter Islands and to see what's possible in terms of improving that. So we've obviously written in condition 6 within the response, just to have the developer work with us to come up with a design to improve the crossing points at the various islands. So we'll work closely with the developer just to improve things. We'll be looking at things like, obviously widen the first priority to try and widen the Splitter Islands themselves and make them more of a refuge for people trying to get across the road. We'll be highlighting the crossing points just through improved texture surfacing, perhaps, and we'll have a look at to see if there's the tactile pavings just to improve the crossing points there. So there's a few things we can do to try and improve the pedestrian movements around there. We recognise the fact that it is a busy road. That is a desire line for that. From that leg, we observed that on the site visit that we had. So it's very much about trying to improve what's there. As I say, we work with the developer to make sure that happens.
Quite happy with that, Councillor Cowan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's quite reassuring to hear that work's going to get undertaken.
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding the roundabout, and I know there's some confusion sometimes that there's roundabout, which one's just for South Craigs and which one's for North Craigs. But understand the first exit South Craigs only, but a lot of people do use that thinking it's local exit, so they go to the second. So I was just wondering if there'd be any maybe better, clearer exit marks. I've already been blasted at trying to get into North Craigs going that way. So there's a lot more traffic going round the roundabout, certainly exiting the town. So it was just maybe some clearer markings for the roundabout, as North Craigs has got so much more traffic now. Thank you.
Chair, well, that maybe explain why I get a peep one day as well. So, yeah, we'll have a look at that and see if we can make some improvements to that. Okay.
Gonna bring in Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in the papers that there was some debate around working hours, the operation in that area. And it was kind of suggested that perhaps the operating hours should be reduced. Ultimately, via the noise impact assessment, they agreed to go along with the more extended hours. I was just wondering if anybody could explain to me what the logic for that particular reasoning was. Thanks.
Okay. Initially, the applicants came in with more extensive hours, such as like 5 AM for the coffee shop unit. And we had discussions with environmental health where we were originally talking about what would be appropriate. The applicants then came in with a noise impact assessment, which environmental health had reviewed and were accepted. We then had further discussions as we were coming towards the conclusion and consideration of the application with the applicant, and we said, look, we think there should we think we could do better here for the residents roundabout, so we have pulled it back, certainly for to 6 AM, etc., rather than the earlier times, because we think that was more appropriate and a better balance for the resounding area, whilst also still giving the units commercial viability. Same with delivery hours. We spoke to the applicant's agent, and we negotiated a better start time for them as well. Again, this was over and above what they came in with the noise impact assessment, because we did feel that notwithstanding that, it would be more appropriate to have that. And we've had this further discussion with environmental health, who are quite accepting of that as well. Does that help?
Yeah, that's helpful. It's just that, I mean, I appreciate that the operator's going to want to make a profit, and the extended hours would be beneficial for them, but it's just taking into consideration the residents in that local area as well. Thanks.
Yeah, the operators were actually quite willing to discuss the matter with us too, so they've accepted the position that we took as well latterly there, and they've accepted the pullback in the hours in both respects too.
That's fine. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. I'm going to bring in Councillor Sangster.
I was actually just about to ask the same question about the noise impact assessment, so it's obviously already been answered. So thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Lennox. I also want to reiterate Councillor Cowan's concerns about the rubbish. That was another one that I had concerns about as well. So thanks for raising that. I think it's really important, but I'm glad to hear that planning can put a condition in place for that. So thank you.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Sangster. On that, I mean, Councillor Cowan and Councillor Sangster both raised that important issue of how we deal with the litter. It's like obviously in these private industrial estates that we get issues with seagulls. That can we stipulate certain type of seagull-proof bins, etc.? How far can we take that?
I suppose the condition will be quite general, but I suppose in our discussions with the applicant's agent, we can actually propose that. And I know the agents in the sort of the gallery this morning, so we'll be taking that into account. Yeah, I think it is a real problem, you know. So yeah, something that we could address through the condition.
I think that's quite reassuring. Members, any other? Yep, Councillor McGee.
I just reiterate, Ken, urban gulls are a real problem, and if we get into Newton area, Kilmarnock, where there's I don't know what it is, a McDonald's or whatever it is, Ken, it's a real problem and a growing problem, and it's not going to disappear unless we stop folk feeding urban gulls. I was just wondering about paragraph 75 and 76. First of all, the landscaping, and I see it's pretty well covered, and we've got condition 3. But for experience, and a lot of councillors find this when we go to different sites and we look at the landscaping and what was promised and what was delivered, it doesn't really match up. So it's like one of the pictures when you go for a burger, Ken, it's quite a big juicy looking thing, and then when you get it, it's a bit no like it at all. So just wondering, will the landscape fulfil what's written down in the paper here? And I was just wondering about the piece of public art.
Sure, thank you very much, Councillor McGee. I do think the landscaping condition, the landscaping scheme will fulfil what we're looking for. Landscaping does take some years to start to mature, etc. But I do think that the extent of landscaping, as demonstrated, as outlined in the report with numbers of planting, etc., and the layout scheme will actually deliver what we want. Part of it that is obviously down to maintenance as well. And you'll see to help cover that matter in condition 3 on page 27, we have put a condition down that says within 10 years of date of planting, it's got to be maintained, etc., plants replaced, etc. So hopefully that will help focus and mean that the landscaping will be cared for, will be maintained, etc. It's also in the operator's interest to make sure that does happen too, because it creates a better environment. The surroundings to the application site are well landscaped, and you saw that from the photographs too. So that is obviously our hope, but we have tried to protect ourselves from that respect as well, in terms of the maintenance for 10 years, etc., to make sure that during the formative years of landscaping, anything that doesn't take is then therefore replaced appropriately. In terms of the public art, we've actually left that quite open. We don't have a specific public art policy in LDP2, but we can, under placemaking principles, look at public art because it helps with cultural identity. It helps with just locality of the area. It helps bring up the sort of local design, urban design, all the rest of it, standards in the local area. And we feel that we can do that through the placemaking principles. We have left that quite an open condition to see what the applicant can come in with. So there is a condition, I think it's just right near the end, from memory, to say that they've got to come into scheme with us. So that's something, it's condition 17 on page 30. So the design is fairly open. Public art could be wide ranging, etc. But I think it's something that we can specifically do better in East Ayrshire. And notwithstanding, you know, the fact that we're doing it under placemaking principles rather than public art under the LDP, but it is quite an open condition to see what we can then start discussing with the applicant. But I know the applicant has been quite open to accepting that planning condition. So hopefully, given it's a gateway site, we can look at what we can get and try and get something that creates a statement for the area. But that's something we would discuss at a later stage with the applicant, subject to members deciding what they want to do today. Does that help? Yep.
Right, after that, Councillor Beattie, I'm going to bring in Councillor Cowett and then Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair. That was good timing. It was just on the back of Councillor McGee's comments about the public art. If there's any opportunity to involve some of the local primary school children, I think that would be an excellent idea. And I know public art has been talked about in that area in the past, so that would be a really good fit. Thank you.
Good shout.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. It's just an observation, and it's on the back of what my colleagues have been saying and what we've been saying over the last few years when it comes to landscaping. Many areas outside of like retail parks or fast food places, sometimes the landscaping just looks like litter catchers for the bushes, and you see all the litter lying under the bushes, and when winter comes you see right through to the litter. So I want to know, is there any condition that we can put on owners or operators to maintain this area? I know I got into a lot of trouble a few years ago asking for this and ended up in the front of a newspaper, but nothing seems to have happened since then. So McDonald's, give them their due, actually try and clear up. I've seen them, they go out and they litter pick and clean, but I've never seen any other large supermarket or operator clean their area. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. I'm hoping that the landscape scheme we have in already, and we've put the conditions down relative to maintenance, etc., and what have you in the condition 3. But with the litter condition, my intention, from what I've scribbled just in my notes whilst we were here, was to kind of make a condition to say that prior to, etc., details of a sort of management scheme for the handling of litter, and together with details of the specification, location and design of litter bins. So to try and get a kind of litter bins on site, but also to understand what their litter management scheme would be under the same condition if members are looking to take it forward today. That then would hopefully allow us the opportunity to understand how they're going to deal with litter, particularly maybe off season, etc., when landscaping might be, you know, if it's not all year round, etc., you know, it's seasonal, some of the plants. So hopefully we'll be able to get sort of double handle that through the landscaping scheme and obviously the litter control condition, if that's what members want to put on at the end of the day.
Thank you, Fiona. Was any further questions? The last thing for me, sorry, it's like obviously there's allocated land KKM6 for a neighbourhood centre. It's just to make sure there's no detrimental impact to that, and that's still safeguarded for that purpose.
It is indeed still safeguarded for the purpose. It is further along the road from where this site is. It is a less visible site. I did point out the location just further along when we were on site, etc. I don't think it will do. We have had informal discussions with the site owners who own that site. I'm aware they are looking at proposals at the moment for that site. Maybe it would be more complementary to this. We don't have anything in at the moment, but I don't think it would, no.
Thanks, Fiona. So members, the recommendations are on page 5, paragraph 2. Now, I think we're also wanting an additional condition about the waste and litter control condition. So members will be happy to approve with the additional condition of waste and litter control. Thank you very much, members. And I'm going to hand over to Fiona.
Just to confirm, would members be happy delegating the wording to the planning service so that we can actually come up with that wording based on what the discussions have been today and based on kind of what I've read out to you just at the moment, if you're happy just to have that delegated?
Members?
Just what you read out, if you want to even just what you read out from your scribbles, I'm satisfied with that as a condition. Thank you.
Yep, I think that's unanimous. We're all happy with that, Fiona. Thank you very much. So members, that's item 3 on the agenda complete. So we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 25/0005/S36. This application is the construction and operation of a battery energy storage system. It's a development and associated infrastructure at Westport Bess A70 near Killock Ochiltree by John Hill Westport Energy. And I'm going to hand over to David Wilson to take us through that.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. The purpose of this report is to present a consultation under Section 36 of the Electricity Act for the consideration of the Planning Committee. The application site is located in agricultural land off Creach Road near the former Killock Depot, about 1.6 kilometres west of Ochiltree. The development comprises of a 150 megawatt battery energy storage facility with associated infrastructure, track, hard standings, access, compound and SUDS and electricity infrastructure with an anticipated operational period of 40 years, all is set out at paragraphs 3 to 5 of the papers. Consultation responses to the Council and to Scottish Government are set out at paragraphs 8 to 29, noting that no consultee has raised an objection, subject to the use of appropriate conditions to control various matters. No representations from third parties have been submitted to the Energy Consent Unit. I'll just share my screen and I'll just talk you through some of the details of the development, if you bear with me. You got that on your screens? Okay. So this is the site location, just showing a bit of context. Ochiltree to the east, Killock to the south and southwest, and the A70 just south of that site. So a more detailed location plan. It shows the agricultural fields to the west, north, east and southeast, and Killock to the southwest. The Creach Road runs from the A70 at the very south of this plan and skirts the land of the application site or in land that's otherwise in the applicant's control along the southern and western boundary. This is the proposed layout plan. It shows the Bess compound located centrally within the wider Red Line site. connected to the main access at the south and an emergency access to the west, with the Suds Pond to the north-east of the site. This is the proposed landscaping plan. Shows the site being subject to planting in and around the Bez compound itself, as well as planting to the northwest, northeast and southeast, and an area of wildflower planting also at the northeast. Farmland remains in the northern section of the site, so the kind of light green colour largely stays as farmland as at the moment. Let's come on to some of the site section elevations, showing the view from the south with the electrical infrastructure and substation building on the western left-hand side of the view, with Bez units extending across the view thereafter to the eastern extent of the site. So just with the size of the site, if you think of those three lower parts as being stitched together, so the top one is the full view across, and it's a more detailed view. So you can see the electrical infrastructure on the left-hand side, which is this area here, and then battery energy units continue across the remainder of the site. And this is also the elevations here on the side of the site. So you can see this is from the Creach Road on the west-hand side. So it's nearest the kind of electrical infrastructure on the site. So the top view is showing the fence that would surround it, with the bottom one with the fence removed, just to see the infrastructure behind that there. This slide is just a photo from the top of the field, just taken beyond the belt of trees that surround the southern part of the site. And you can see it's got a gentle slope at this stage, heading down towards the north. So the development was supported by a handful of viewpoints, most of them within a kilometre or two at the most. So I've picked a couple of these out and just talk you through these just now. So this is the viewpoint just from the north. It's on the Creach Road. You can see just at the bottom of the screen there, that is the existing view. So you see the land rising up, and the trees that you see on the horizon as the southern boundary of the application site. More detailed view of that there. And you'll not see an awful lot of change, but that is the Bez site rendered in. So you can see just almost on the horizon a kind of fence, essentially with some small bits of infrastructure that would project above that. So largely just located on and just below the horizon from this view, with the trees still backclothing that. And this is an indicative view that the developers put forward for year 15. So the planting plan that I showed earlier surrounding the Bez and at some of the corners of the field are anticipated to have matured much more significantly by this stage. And you can see that where, and I'll just come back so you can see and compare these two here, the kind of differences. So the kind of planting softens the fence on the horizon, and there's obviously some additional planting is obviously visible on the right hand side, which is the kind of northwest corner of their application site field. So just coming on to another viewpoint, this one is right at the corner of the site. So it's on the Creach Road where it kind of wraps round. You can see just at the bottom of the screen there, the kind of belt of trees that runs along the boundary with the field beyond. Some more detailed view of that. So this one's a bit more obvious, where you can see predominantly the fence round about the Bez compound itself. You'll see some elements of some of the higher parts of the electricity infrastructure just projecting above that, mainly on the kind of western side, which is kind of slightly behind the tree that's in the foreground. And you'll see the planting that's been shown is in its early stages at this point. And this is the applicant's suggestion of year 15. There is some additional hedge planting to take place. You can see that sticking up there. And you can see that the tree and shrub planting round about the Bez site and on the closer elements to the camera view here would be much more substantial after a number of years. And I shall stop sharing at that. So if I can just turn now just to the assessment. The development plan does not have primacy in Section 36 developments, but it is a useful and logical assessment tool to base our assessment, and that's how we've progressed with the report as is kind of normal practice. The key matters of interest are set out from paragraph 31 to 83, noting that strong in-principle support for such development is gained from national and local policies in respect to renewable energy generation and positive effects on carbon emissions over the lifetime of the development. Total output, the development 150 megawatts is a useful contribution to Scottish Government targets for renewable energy generation. There are limited landscape and visual effects of the development, predominantly in the very immediate area around the development site, with key views from the Creach C-Class public road and from various rural properties, predominantly within 1 to 2 kilometres north of the development. There are no unacceptable impacts on a range of different matters, including the historic environment, ecology and the water environment, often subject to conditions. With the proposed planting, the development will make a positive contribution to enhancing biodiversity value at the site. Whilst the development requires cut and fill of soils to create a level compound, this will be managed within the site to achieve the correct levels, and soils do not require to be exported from the site. There are no unacceptable impacts on communities or individual dwellings by way of visual impact, with no property adjudged to receive any overbearing visual impacts, and noise impacts can be kept within acceptable levels subject to controlling conditions as confirmed by the Council's expert consultant. There are no unacceptable impact on trunk or local roads subject to appropriate controlling conditions, noting the positions of both ARA and Transport Scotland. Development uses a short and straight section of the Creach Road after leaving the A70 and subject to control through a traffic management plan. No unacceptable impacts are expected on that road. Some positive economic impact would be anticipated from the construction works. An agreement on the provision of a legal agreement to secure decommissioning restoration has been reached. As noted within the conclusions at paragraphs 84 to 86, there is in principle support for the development and it represents a useful contribution to renewable energy production. There will be some effects from the development, however these are generally considered to be quite limited and effects can be controlled through the use of planning conditions and a legal agreement. It's considered that the development is compliant overall with the development plan and most other material considerations are generally supportive of the development. Legal and financial risk implications are set out at paragraphs 87 to 90. Noting that the applicant would be expected to enter into a legal agreement with the Council to secure a planning monitoring officer and a financial guarantee. The applicant has agreed to this in principle. It is noted that should the Council raise an objection to development, this would likely trigger a public local inquiry and participation in such a process would be necessary. The recommendation is set out at paragraph 2, which is to object unless a legal agreement is concluded and the conditions from page 40 of the papers are imposed by ministers subject to any agreed modifications following negotiation. Just in respect to the conditions, members, the formatting in the first electronic version and the paper copy before committee requires some corrections, with the financial guarantee condition on page 56 to be noted as condition 5. It didn't have a number attached to it. With the other conditions thereafter renumbered accordingly, and the table at condition 23 requiring updating to ensure it's completed with the correct technical noise limits. This was just a formatting issue when we were preparing the report for production. These have now all been updated in the version online, and I've just asked for committee's agreement that it is the updated version that forms the formal consultation response should the recommendation be agreed. Thanks, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, David. Members, over to yourself for points. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. It's just in relation to paragraph 79 to 80 on decommissioning and restoration financial guarantee. Obviously, that's the area that we're most concerned with now. We know that technology moves extremely fast. So say, for example, in 10 years' time, this is obsolete. We no longer need best storage. Does this guarantee that we'll have it fully restored and handed back to the way it was? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, it does. It's there for the lifetime of the development, or if it requires to be taken away. So it's like, say there was an event like a liquidation of the company, for example, and no one took it on to run it. We are the kind of last resort, and the monies are there to allow that to happen. So we would still expect any developer being responsible if they decided that the scheme was no longer viable, wasn't necessary, that they would take it away. That would still be the expectation. But the bond's there in case that doesn't happen and we have to step in. So yes, the basic answer is yes, that's money's there for that type of circumstance, as well as if it's run for its full 40 years and then they don't restore it at that point. It really doesn't matter. It's for the whole length of the permission period.
Quite happy with that response, yep. Members, anybody else? Yep. Councillor Lennox.
Thanks again, Chair. It's pretty evident, I think, that we can see the start of a wee cluster here in terms of battery energy storage units. There's one currently under, well, I think it's almost complete now along the road. And I think it's fairly evident for the plans that David shared with us there that they're looking for, there's a contingency in there for expansion at some point in time with a green space round about it. I don't have an issue with that, but I appreciate it's no material consideration, but I'm going to bang the drum again in terms of community benefit. It's no mandatory for these developments to provide any community benefit. I had a heartening conversation with a couple of representatives for the Ochiltree community recently who said they'd been in discussions with the existence base along the road, the one that's nearly complete, and they have agreed to provide some level of community benefit. So there is going to be something, again, it's no mandatory, but at least through discussions, the local community will benefit. And I would just encourage this particular developer as well to get into discussions either with an 9cc or with the local community that's nearby to provide some sort of community benefit in a financial sense. Thank you, Chair.
That's Councillor Lennox. Good points. Yep.
You summed that up well there, Councillor. It's obviously it's not material, but we are speaking to the developer generally as an ongoing basis. So clearly the recording's available, but I'm happy just to point that out to them that that's a point that's been made and that contact might be useful. But certainly there's nothing stopping the Community Council reaching out to them as well. And I would encourage them to do that. That's a couple of BES developments, I think, that have come to negotiated positions then locally. And there is no formal guidance on BES having to do this, but many developers are reasonable. And if there's something that can be done, I'm quite sure they'd be happy to do that. But I'll certainly mention to them that that's a desire perhaps locally, and to try and get in touch with the right people in the back of that. And other than that, it's over to them, I'm afraid.
Thanks, David. Councillor Maben.
Thank you. I'm just looking paragraph 7, the planning history, and this one's 150 megawatt that we're talking about today, but this previous one was a smaller 50 megawatt. Was that the same company that had the previous plan with another site just south of here?
It was a different company, Councillor. We've put it in there just because of the potential cumulative interest, because that is two schemes that would have permission very, very close to each other. But they're different developers. My understanding is the development that's just to the south of Creech Road, so the one mentioned at paragraph 7, is unlikely to be going ahead. They've not discharged any conditions, and that consent lapses in the next couple of months or so. So they may come forward with changes or to want to do something, but the latest information I had is that one's unlikely to be built out.
Thanks for that, Councillor Maben. Any other questions or clarification? No. So members, the recommendations on page 33, paragraph 2, but noting what David has requested that we approve the updated online version of the conditions. Is that right, David?
Yes, Councillor, that's the ask. It's the same report. It's just corrected the errors that crept in the kind of finalisation and printing process.
Thanks, David. So is everyone in agreement with that? Okay, thank you very much, members. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, and that is the compliance monitoring update of major developments and environmental impacts. And it's back to Fiona, thanks.
Thank you again, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update to the committee members in relation to the compliance monitoring activity for large-scale and environmental projects. I'm just going to talk you through the report today, members. The appendices all focus on the monitoring compliance activity, and these are attached to your report. In paragraph 5, we've just updated the position relative to the internal arrangements in the council within the planning service, and we now have a lead enforcement officer post that's been created and filled from one of the existing enforcement posts, and that post holder is now in place and is managing a new dedicated enforcement team. That gives greater prominence and representation within development management, and we have also now recruited a graduate planner. The graduate planner post is an existing post that's been in our department for quite some time. We've now moved that post into the enforcement team to give additional emphasis on enforcement and compliance. The graduate planner role will also still focus on training of the graduate planner in planning matters and also dealing with planning applications, but they will also work alongside and be based within the enforcement team. We are in the position of recruiting to that vacant post, and that is underway at the present time. In terms of open cast coal restoration sites at paragraph 6 on page 73, the council-led restoration works have now been completed, and that matter will now drop off from the report in future. Paragraph 7 on page 73 and following pages then continues on to consider the major developments underway at the present time. And I'll just summarise a couple of those for you now. Whole House Road, which is not far from obviously London Road at the moment, we have had issues relative to landscaping and play space. We've approved the details, and we are expecting the works to take place during this planting season. That expires in April 2026, and there is ongoing monitoring of that. And if that work isn't undertaken by April, we will obviously be reviewing that matter further with the housing developer concerned. I'm going to bring David in relative to Rig Road before I continue to talk about any of the other ones, in terms of starting at paragraph 10, because there have been more recent meetings relative to this report, and David's going to summarise that for you now.
Thanks, Fiona. So members, obviously it's a compliance report that covers up to the end of December, but I thought it'd be useful just to give you a quick update, because we met the Rig Road developer just this week to get an update on what's happening. As members know, we served notices relating to quite a few different things: drainage, landscaping, a link road, and a fence, amongst others. So there's been limited progress on site, but there has been some work done to prepare a lot of drainage information. And just as background for that, the developer is needing that information to then finalise what the drainage position will be on site, may have to do some further drainage works to the satisfaction of Scottish Water before that's all then adopted and closed off. So preparing their information in that has put them back from actually going and doing the works, because they now have to have it's in front of their engineers to finalise the scheme. So there may be an extra suds pond that requires to go in on the back of that to properly deal with surface water. So that's pushed a few things back, because until they have that, they can't then go and complete the drainage, because we don't currently have a completely finalised scheme. We need that to be submitted to us. We expect that in the next few weeks, that will come to us and to Scottish Water. If that's approved, we'll be expecting the developer to go and implement that. That has some knock-on effects for some elements of compliance on the site. So the areas that we're looking for the landscaping to be completed, the developers ask us, well, we don't want to landscape the areas that we might have to rip straight back out to finalise the drainage. So there is a few kind of knock-on elements from the drainage. But the good news is that other areas of landscaping that won't be affected by any of the drainage works is to be implemented in the failing near future. The soils that have been deposited are going to be removed from the site in the near future as well. So we have got progress on that. The developer has indicated that the link road into the Homehead Hospital site is not something that they want to be fulfilling. We've obviously expressed our view that we think that is required. So the next stage for them is to fully set out their position on that and for us to take a view. So at the moment, that's not a formal position from the developer, but we have been verbally advised that. So we are going to have to wait and see what they put in writing to us about that, and then we'll take a view on what our next steps are. So limited movement on the ground in terms of compliance, but we do have a kind of a verbally agreed understanding of what's going to happen over the next number of weeks and which works can be done. And then once we have some of that detail also coming in, that will give us an idea of what the revised timescales are to complete the drainage and then complete the finalised bits of the landscaping beyond that. So it's moving a wee bit slowly. Ideally, we would have been much further forward, but we are still working with the developer. The notices have taken effect, so we are expecting things to be happening. But we do have to be reasonable in terms of the constraints that they're putting forward. So those discussions continue, and if there's any questions at the end, I'm happy to kind of offer any clarity on that. I'll pass you back to Fiona.
Okay, moving on with the report, we have Bridge House Hill Road. We have issued the approvals that we needed to issue relative to Cunningham Housing Association for taking these matters forward. We are still waiting on start dates coming through. The Cunningham Housing Association have advised us that they hope the work will start in the short term relative to play areas. As noted in the report, I have been in communication with Cunningham Housing Association and will continue to do so to try and get work starting in the short term as best as possible. They've noted as per paragraph 17, as per the landscaping works and how they still have issues with the road network to start that. Again, I will keep communicating with Cunningham Housing to see, and also will our lead enforcement officer, to see how we can get them to start work as soon as possible. The footpath areas, Cunningham are still in discussion with our housing service relative to footpath connections, and I will update members once I have further information in that regard, but it is noted in your report. As per paragraph 19, there remain issues with the former compound area, which we understood was still to be in the ownership of the contractors. We have recently served a planning contravention notice. That has now been returned, and we have been advised by the contractor post the preparation of this report that they have now sold the land to a different company, and we are now pursuing matters and have made contact with that other company as well. What's not noted in the report, but is in your appendix, is the Avant site in Stewarton at Draffin. Further to the application that was at Planning Committee late last year, we have met Avant representatives on site. We've raised several issues. We've asked them to go back and look at all the different details. We are still just waiting on Avant coming back into us. I did email them this week. I haven't had a reply as yet, but I will obviously update members within this report, and obviously as soon as I know any further details too for the local issues there. Moving on to electricity substations, we have noted that while North Kyle Wind Farm works are continuing on site with all turbines erected with various delays making final grid connections, but works are moving on and there are no specific ongoing monitoring issues, compliance monitoring issues there. Whiteley Wind Farm on page 76, we are noting that the draft bond remains under review, but we're expecting it to be agreed early this year and hope that that will be in place for the next reporting period. Kilmarnock South Energy Battery Storage, works are largely concluded within the reporting period and connection to the grid has formally commenced. Planting has been taking place recently and there's a final PMO review to take place in this quarter. Penclow Wind Farm, the works on site have been largely in compliance with planning condition and approved documents, and Coulton Bez works continue to progress on this site with no enforcement issues being raised during the reporting period. There's reference there to the single and dual wind turbines on paragraph 76, and I don't think there have been any changes to that through this reporting period, members. Moving on to the quarries, which relates to Appendix 5 within your report, starting at paragraph 77. In Garpole Quarry, there is an outstanding requirement for the review of the habitat monitoring and bird management and bird monitoring plan that continues to be pursued by officers. With Deerduff Quarry, we have had further inquiries received in the reporting period regarding approved HGV routings and embargoes during school opening and closing times at Dunlop, but we have had nothing that had led to complaints that there is a planning breach. Tincorn Hill Quarry, we have had no complaints or other compliance matters raised during the reporting period. And Garlath landfill site at Appendix 6 has been mothballed and there are no issues of compliance to note. There are potential future and compliance monitoring statements given to you in paragraph 77, page 77, starting at paragraph 33 and 34. And it's noted that Darn Corner remains an unrestored open cast coal site, and the site has recently changed ownership and Legal College are currently in correspondence with them. Other than that, members, I would ask that that be noted, and if there's any questions, we're obviously happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Very much for your own, David. I think you really need to appreciate the work that the enforcement team and planning officers are doing in this, because some of the matters contained within this report have been raised in here and there's actually been taken, so really appreciate that. So members are going to open it up to any questions within this report. Councillor Count.
Just to reinforce your remarks, I think this refreshed report approach to looking at the compliance has been really helpful for the planning committee. So thank you for everybody's input into that.
Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, in relation to the Rig Road, Afton Braes development, I think perhaps moving forward there might be a case for more stringent conditions being attached to some of the developments by this particular developer. Maybe some conditions that mean that things have to be done before there's any commencement on site, stuff like that. Because these issues have been ongoing now for quite some time. And there's evidence that elsewhere in the authority, I think we're storing up some issues for the future as well. On a more positive note, I think what would be helpful, if it's practically possible, would be if planning colleagues could publish a map which shows the location and names of the various battery energy storage sites, wind farms, quarries, just for easy. I'm getting to an age now where I'm not remembering where these places are and stuff like that, but that would be really useful if something like that either exists or if it could be published, please. That's all I've got. Thanks, Chair.
Just bring in David to address these points.
Thanks, Councillor. The mapping, there is online mapping on the website, and there's layers that you can put on that will be able to you'll be able to pick up all the wind farms. So there's that layer there. We don't have one for BES, but you can do an easy enough search on the website as well, which would bring up the details of them. So we used to have a kind of consolidated plan at all the open cast on it and all of that. We don't publish that plan. We used to update it every month with the changes, but we now have brought that into the existing electronic mapping on the website. So the vast majority of what you're looking for there should be accessible. And I can send you on where to find that and the kind of things to look for. There's probably not one single map that covers all of those kind of elements that you requested, but it can all be found from what we currently publish.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm going to bring it in Councillor McGee.
Just to say, David, send it on to us all.
Any further? Councillor Maben.
Just on the Bridge House Hill Road stuff, that's news to me that part of the site's been sold on and to another developer, so I'd be interested to find out who that is. Myself and the other two councillors in the ward have been regular visitors down there with various issues. This compound that is still lying as an eyesore and all fenced up. Well, when the fences are up, when they don't fall down and the teenagers run about the site. It'd be really good to see that moving forward and something done with it. I'm just clarifying that you have a lot of engagement here with Cunningham Housing Association. Have they stepped up and are doing some of the things now that should have been done with the developer when the houses were being built originally? So they're helping out when they really didn't have to, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We only found out ourselves recently that the site has been, the remaining land has been sold off by the original contractors when we served the planning contravention notice. We got that back earlier in the week, and our lead enforcement officers already contacted the other company to try and make contact and see whether we can start discussions with them. It was news to us as well when we served the planning contravention notice, but that's why we served the planning contravention notice, to double check the position on ownership. In relation to Cunningham Housing Association, we've had some quite good discussions with them. I'm really just waiting on start dates now from them. I've had good contact with the people in there, and I've known Cunningham Housing Association over the years on other schemes. So I will keep on at them, and I will see what we can do to get that work started. They have put all their consents that we need them to do in planning in place. They're still negotiating with the housing service regarding connections into the housing footpath network. Local network, but in terms of the landscaping the play areas, I'm just really waiting on a start date from them, and hopefully we should get that fairly shortly. But I will keep in communication with them. I have no doubt that they are wanting to try and address the matters that they've been left with by the contractor, based on the discussions that I've had to date. Does that help you?
I think it's really good. No credit to them stepping up and trying to make improvements here when it's the developer that went bust that's let things down here. I think, Claire, do we want to ask about the road? Well, I've an email for Barry this morning for Ara, so that's quite interested in getting the road bond and getting the main road sorted out. I don't know if you're going to pull the road bond in and get that money and then use that money to fix things. There's an area of flooding down there and a curb that's not right. So hopefully you'll keep pushing and doing the good work and get everything sorted. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Maven. Members, anything further, or are you happy to note the reports? Okay. Thank you very much. We're on to item 6 on the agenda, and that is an update report on progress of planning applications which have been recommended for approval, which are subject to the conclusion of an appropriate legal agreement and/or a legacy planning applications in East Ayrshire. I'm going to hand over to David for this one.
Thanks, Chair. This report is the biannual report on progress with applications subject to legal agreement and legacy planning applications, and the report's covering the period July to December 2025. For this period, paragraphs 7 and 8 in Appendix Table 1 show that there are 9 applications awaiting conclusion of a legal agreement, the same number as the last period. However, during this time, the applications were concluded or withdrawn, but 3 new applications requiring a legal agreement have been added. At this time, 1 application is being carefully monitored for progress, but isn't suggested to return to committee at this time. It will be kept under careful review over the next 2 or 3 months to ensure that it does progress. In respect of legacy applications, paragraphs 9 to 11 and Table 2 show that there are 13 legacy applications. That's 5 less than the last reporting period. 9 legacy applications were cleared in this period, with 4 new legacy cases added. Many of these applications are under processing agreement, which project manages the application to revise timescales, and around half are undergoing legal agreement negotiations following minded to approve decisions already being taken. Members are therefore asked to note the content of the report and the actions on each application set out in the tables, which is currently to allow continued progress on each legacy and legal agreement application. Thanks, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, David. Members, over to yourself for any questions, points of view or clarification. Don't see anything, so you're happy to note the content of the report, note the recommended actions in each application subject to legal agreement over a 6-month target period, and note the recommended actions and legal legacy applications. Yep. Thank you very much, members. We're on to item 7 on the agenda, and this is the revised pre-application advice process and fees, and Pamela Clifford, the Chief Planning Officer, is going to talk us through it.
Thank you, Chair. So the report deals with a number of issues. Firstly, to advise members of a revised pre-application process for major and locally important development proposal, but also includes the pre-application awareness session for elected members. It also addresses and seeks a view from members on revised fees for the pre-application process and discretionary fees, and also seeks approval on the Planning Committee site visit arrangements and the updated hearing procedure that we're proposing this morning. So starting with the pre-application process, early pre-application advice brings real benefits to the planning process by improving the quality of development as well as improving timescales for permissions, and is very much supported by the Scottish Government. The pre-application process helps to also provide advice to applicants where there may be significant policy constraints for their proposals to ensure they have sufficient advance notification of potential issues and conflicts with their proposal. It also helps us to achieve more placemaking and design benefits, and also ultimately that smoother application process and quicker decision making. At present, most of our pre-application inquiries are dealt with by written response. This worked very well during the pandemic when we were all working more remotely. However, we now want to propose a more refreshed and bespoke pre-application process, one which reflects the different needs of different applications, and to provide a greater take-up and move away from solely written responses. The revised pre-application service will retain the two-stage process. So the first one is your smaller developments. So that's your house extensions, your small-scale housing, the commercial proposals and shop fronts and adverts. We will still offer an initial telephone conversation with the case officer, a written response with the option of a meeting thereafter, which is at the discretion of the planning service. The key change to this service will be reviewing the content of reports which are issued as part of the pre-application advice. So they will be more focused, more subject-based, and responding to the particular issues raised by the development process. They will actually mirror more like your committee report, the new committee report format, as well as our delegated reports on that. And that's to ensure the responses are more proportionate but linked to the primary considerations. The second one is your major developments, and that will be more focused on a mixture of meetings, site visits, workshops and discussions on that, and that will be agreed upfront with the planning service and the applicant's project team. It will seek to provide a more structured process where applicant teams are working collaboratively with the council, and where consultation with council's elected members also can be integrated within that process. It will also bring together stakeholders not only within the council but out with. Given the focus, these meetings will be minuted, which will provide a record of discussion. The minutes of these meetings and workshops will be produced and issued to all parties for agreement, and then there will be a final response produced, which will confirm the discussions that have been taken to date, as well as highlighting the main points for detailed consideration by the potential applicants before any application is submitted. Turning now to the elected member awareness session, members will be aware that we've piloted this in 2024 with a site in Kilmarnock and received really good feedback, both from members who attended the session and from the developer. Members considered the session to be very beneficial and allowed them to highlight local issues, plus forewarning them of potential development in their own ward. Since then, we've had 3 sessions in 2025, which again were welcomed by members and really good feedback also from developers. I think the benefit of having the awareness session is that all elected members in all 9 wards can attend, and it's not just limited to those that are on the planning committee. While it's envisaged that the majority of development proposals coming before these awareness sessions are major and national developments, it does not preclude the local, more complex applications which would benefit from a members' awareness session. In Appendix 2 and 3, there's a procedure note and a template which we have been using for the members' briefing note. In terms of fees, the Town and Country Planning Fees for Application Regulations 2022 introduced additional categories of fees to charge. This included discretionary fees for services, also to reduce or waiver fees in certain classes, and to apply a surcharge for respective applications. Retrospective applications. Fees were originally introduced for pre-application discussions for local and major developments in June 2019. That was reviewed again in April 2024 with the introduction of charges for conditions and discharge of conditions and non-material variations. It was felt that following a review that we needed to review our charging again because it was overcomplicated when we did a benchmarking exercise with other planning authorities and just address that fee structure. In paragraph 28 of the report, you will see the number of pre-application approaches since 2020. On that, it's ranged from a high of 62 in 2022 to 38 in 2024, and again is on the rise in 2025 to 52. In terms of the increase in fees that we're proposing, that is outlined in a table in paragraph 34. We're proposing that the major development, we have a flat fee this time of £4,000. This will be for those complex major applications which would benefit from detailed discussions and negotiations. And I would say that the majority of our major developments do go through the pre-application process. And I know that the Scottish Government are looking at that to maybe make that mandatory, that all major and national developments go through pre-application discussions before applicants submit their application. In terms of local development, again, this is identified in the table. The fee will be half the planning fee up to the stated maximum amounts on that. In East Ayrshire, we do get a lot of inquiries for single houses. And again, we're proposing a flat fee for single houses pre-application advice. In order to support the regeneration that is being carried out in sort of our town centres, we're proposing a free advice service for shop fronts, adverts, and just to sort of give that support to the ambition and aspirations and for our town centres and to support local businesses. So that is not just for Kilmarnock town centre, but includes Sturton, Cumnock, New Cumnock, and other town centres. In terms of the provision of advice for householders for domestic proposals and for accessibility works to benefit householders, that will continue to remain free, in addition to advice to be given to community councils, charities, non-profit organisations on that, including food banks, hubs and allotments, which have the benefits of social and health benefits for such uses on that. So again, outlined in the table to remain, that would remain free. Other charges that we have reviewed is the planning certificate, which we issue for licensing. Again, a small increase to £200 for that. And again, for looking at high hedge applications, which we get a lot of inquiries, but we don't get a lot of applications for that, increasing the fee to £450. as I said, these proposed changes to the fee matrix, we've taken a benchmarking exercise, which one of Fiona's team has done all the footwork on that, and that benchmarking exercise, we've included it for your interest within Appendix 4. I would also, just to finish on fees, highlight that in June 2025, Scottish Government introduced fees for applications for reviews. These have been introduced in East Ayrshire and in accordance with the legislation, and again detailed in paragraph 44 of the report. Turning now to planning committee hearings and site visits. So the present planning committee hearing procedure has been in place since 2003. It is non-statutory in nature, apart from the pre-determination hearings, which under the scheme of delegation, planning committee are making a recommendation to the council, with the council taking the final decision. The hearing procedure, I think the hearing procedure is a very important part of the planning committee, and also in terms of applications and that sort of relationship with applicants and objectors. Presently, the hearing procedure only allows the applicant to address the planning committee if objectors have indicated they want to address the planning committee. Having reviewed the planning hearing procedure, we are recommending the following changes. If an objector indicates prior to the planning committee taking place that they wish to address the planning committee, but either don't turn up on the day or indicate on the day they do not wish to speak, the applicant will still have a right to address the planning committee. The second key change that we're proposing is that if an application is determined by the planning committee solely on the basis of the chief planning officer exercising their discretion under the approved scheme of delegation, a hearing will take place regardless of whether an objector wishes to address the planning committee. Finally, objectors will require to indicate they wish to address the planning committee at least 2 days prior to the committee date, and if they do not, then they will not be able to address the planning committee unless special circumstances are advanced. That within the existing hearing procedure, it is proposed that the timescales for objectors and applicants addressing the committee remain unchanged, together with the requirement that no new information, photographs or videos are presented to the planning committee or during the planning hearing, and we would require that to be done prior to the planning committee and prior to the planning hearing. And that lastly, in terms of committee site visits, again, we have reviewed how they are held. At present, the site visits are diarised a calendar year in advance for members and officers, but site visits are held as and when requested by an elected member who sits on the planning committee. Often these site visits are called at short notice, which can depend on members' diaries and can affect attendance. Site visits are very important as part of sort of the planning application process and the planning committee. It is a useful insight to review a site, but also understand plans and proposals, especially if there's objections to the application or the development has significant environmental or placemaking impacts. As a result, following a review, it is recommended that there will be a presumption that a site visit will take place for applications subject to objection and those requested by a member of the planning committee or chief planning officer, unless members advise they do not require a site visit. Timetable arrangements for the site visit will be issued with members' agenda papers on the Friday before the planning committee meeting, and it's likely that the site visit will be on a Tuesday morning. Site visits will be attended by officers of the planning service who will explain as the plans and proposals, point out physical features of the site and the surrounding area, the location of any objector's property and the natures of objections if relevant. They will continually be diarised yearly by Democratic Services, although if required, a site visit can be called on a different date depending on council business and urgent matters. Turning now to recommendation, and I recognise there's a lot in this report. We've covered a lot. This morning I'm looking for the Planning Committee to agree the procedures associated with the elected member awareness session in terms of the pre-application advice stage. Number 2 is to agree the revised hearing procedure for non-statutory hearings at the Planning Committee. Thirdly, to agree the revised site visit process associated with the Planning Committee. The last requirement is that in terms of the fees, we're not asking for the Planning Committee to agree them this morning. We're asking for yourselves to express a view of the revised scheme for discretionary charges for providing pre-application advice, licence certificates and high hedges applications, noting that if you agree that will be presented to a future cabinet meeting just on the revised scheme for discretionary charges. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Palmer. So I'll hand over to the committee for any questions. Points, Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. It's just to say, welcome the fact that still there's going to be no change to the free of charge service for community councils and charities and the like. That's welcome news. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point on the proposed change to the Plan Committee hearing procedure. The position about if the objector doesn't turn up, the applicant will still be able to address them. So my assumption is, and I know I'm asked a question I probably know the answer for, that will be clearly stated to the objector prior to the Planning Committee.
We could, looking towards Democratic Services, we could include that within the letter, that notification that goes out to them, so that they are clear. And if they don't come along, then and the applicants there wants to address the committee, there will be that sort of opportunity on that. It just seemed unfair, and I know that it was only in a handful of occasions that sometimes the applicant comes already to speak to the committee, and sometimes it's actually beneficial for the committee to hear from the applicant, but if the objector doesn't turn up, there's no opportunity for them to speak to the Planning Committee.
Through you, Chair, just to also confirm that Democratic Services will be updating their suite of letters.
Happy with that, Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah.
See any other? Yeah. Councillor McGee.
Just looking for a wee bit clarification on the high hedges. I mean, I've had numerous dealings and I don't recall planning ever coming to my aid to try and solve the dispute. So I just want a wee bit clarification as how does this work and who pays the fees?
Yeah, the high hedge legislation is different from normal planning applications. So the complainant actually pays the fee to sort of make a high hedge application on that. It is quite, there's a lot of emphasis on discussion taking place before they actually submit the application to the planning service on that. So they have to speak to the person who's hedged this, try to sort of negotiate sort of a a sort of solution before actually making the application, but it's the complainant that actually pays the fee, not the actual person who owns the sort of hedge. Also, we often get sort of inquiries about the fact that saying it's a high hedge when in fact it's not. It's a group of trees on that, and there's been a lot of reporters' decisions based on the fact that it's not a valid high hedge sort of application on that. David, is there anything you want to add to it, because you've been involved in them in a lot more
Maybe
detail?
only just to kind of state that Pamela's right there, and we've not had that many of these applications since this legislation came in. I think there was a push at one stage that this could be a way to kind of resolve issues for people where they've got these disputes, but it is quite tight in terms of what constitutes a high hedge, and frequently when people do contact us on investigation, it's actually not a high hedge, and it falls outside that legislation. But the initial onus is very much on the two parties working together, and if they do come forward with a high hedge application, it has to be supported with information to show that every reasonable effort has been made to resolve this out with an application like that. So I think the purpose and what the legislation tries to do is helpful, but I think in practice it's only a handful of very specific cases that it would actually pick up. There's many things that fall out with similar things, similar type impacts, but they don't fall within the definition of that legislation, which kind of demonstrates that's why we've not had that many applications, and I don't think it's a terribly popular application type across the whole of Scotland. Some do fall within it, it is still used, but we don't get many of them. We get initial inquiries, but very, very few end up through to an application to us.
You want to come back in, John? Yeah.
A day, aye. Again, this is maybe no the time for this, but again, we've got a high hedge and then we're talking about tall trees. So somebody can plant a row of 200-foot trees in Poker Left and Dortness, and these trees turn over their back doors and there's nothing you can do. It seems a bit strange.
Thanks, Councillor McGee. Going to bring in Councillor Lennox.
Sorry, Chair. Hopefully we're done with that particular subject, and with your permission, I'd like to go back to item 4 on the agenda. And it's just my curiosity is getting the better of me in terms of one of the views that was portrayed in that showed it was from Tally Ho. Was that correct?
I think that's what they called it. So
I just find that very amusing.
I don't know if that's the accurate name for it, but that's what they've called it. I've just described it as to the north on Creek Road, so I can't confirm one way or the other if that's the proper name, but certainly that's what they've presented to us, Councillor.
Any further points, members? So are you happy to go with the recommendations in page 114, paragraph 2? Okay, members, I think that concludes today's business. So thank you very much for your attendance and the safe journey home.